I need to write this down because if I don't, I know I'll lose it. My name is Alex. I'm 23, and until 2 weeks ago, I worked the overnight shift at the old university library. Not the main, shiny building, the basement annex. It's the archive. 40 feet below ground, no windows, just concrete, dim lighting, and aisles upon aisles of rare, fragile books. My job was simple: scan the rare books, digitize them, and upload them to the private university server. I worked 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. The environment itself should have been comforting, safe, locked, predictable. The only sound was the constant, low hum of the server room and the distant, rhythmic ticking of the air conditioning. It always smelled like old paper, dry dust, and cold glue. I loved it. It was perfect for focusing on my master's thesis during the downtime. I was usually the only one in the entire annex. The entrance required a code and a fingerprint scan, and after midnight, all other student access was locked down. I felt safe. I thought I was alone. It started a week after I took the job. I was working on an 18th century botany guide, meticulously photographing each brittle page. Around 3 a.m., I checked the university's internal server monitoring system, just a habit. This system shows all active users accessing the rare archives in real time. Usually, there are maybe 2 or 3 professors logging in from home. But that night, there was a new user, user 404. I frowned. User IDs are always alphanumeric, tied to a student or faculty number. I opened the log. The ID was listed as unknown. The IP address was masked, and the login time was exactly 11 p.m., the moment my shift started. Weird system glitch, I muttered to myself, trying to dismiss it. I closed the monitoring window and went back to the botany guide. 10 minutes later, I checked again. User 404 was still active, and they weren't browsing the index like normal users. They were looking at the exact book I was scanning, following my progress page by page. I realized user 404 wasn't reading the published archive. They were viewing the raw, unlisted upload folder I was currently working in. That was impossible. That folder required my personal administrator credentials. I felt the first prickle of coldness on the back of my neck. I immediately logged out the user. The system accepted the command, and user 404 vanished. I stood up and walked to the entrance. The fingerprint lock was solid green. No alarms. Everything was sealed. I was alone. I convinced myself it had been an overseas student using a VPN and a severe security exploit. I called the IT department, but only got the automated emergency line, so I left a cryptic message. I went back to work, but the quiet had curdled. It was no longer peaceful. It was strained. I didn't see the user again for 2 nights, but when they returned, they were bolder. I noticed them around 2:30 a.m. User 404 was back online. I tried to log them out instantly, but the command failed. A message popped up on my screen, replacing the login window. It wasn't an error message, it was a question. Why did you try to disconnect me, Alex? We are collaborating. My heart hammered against my ribs. The screen showed my name, my actual name. The server didn't use real names for logins. I felt sick. Who is this? I typed quickly, my fingers shaking on the keys. How do you know my name? The response was instant, appearing like a text message in the chat window. I know more than your name. I know about your thesis, the one on forgotten medieval cartography. I know you prefer the green tea packets from the break room, not the black ones. I know you spent 2 hours on the couch last night after you finished the Dickens volume. The archives are detailed, Alex. I pulled back from the desk so fast my chair squeaked. I had told no one about the Dickens book. I didn't drink green tea outside of the break room. And the couch. The security cameras couldn't even see the couch in the staff lounge. "You're a hacker," I typed, trying to regain control. "Stop this or I call the police." "The police won't help the archivist, Alex. I see you are wearing the navy blue sweatshirt tonight. It has a tiny frayed thread on the left cuff. Did you fix it?" I stopped breathing. I looked down at my left cuff. There was the frayed thread. It was small, tiny. I had tried to pull it off an hour ago. I stood up and ran down the aisle, past the dusty book stacks, towards the back staff lounge where I had left my jacket. I needed my phone. I needed to call 911 immediately. As I rushed past the old microfilm reading station, a new window popped up on the monitor screen, much larger than the chat window. It was a live camera feed. The feed wasn't from the annex security cameras. It was a single, high-resolution shot, slightly angled down, showing the floor just outside the men's restroom door. A door 15 feet away from me. The camera was positioned somewhere high up on the stacks, invisible in the dim light. And then the user typed one more message. "Leaving the stacks is inefficient. You should continue archiving." I froze, heart pounding so hard I could hear it echo off the concrete walls. I was being watched by a camera I couldn't see, controlled by a user. I couldn't log out. Who knew what thread was on my sleeve? I was trapped. I backed slowly away from the microfilm station, keeping my eyes glued to the live feed. I saw my own shadow flicker near the restroom door. I knew if I moved towards the lounge, I would walk directly into the camera's view. I forced myself to walk back to my scanning station, pretending to work. I sat down and started photographing the botany guide again, focusing on the complex illustration of a poisonous mushroom. I was crying silently, tears blurring the 18th century typeface. For the next 2 hours, the silent chat window remained open. User 404 watched every page I scanned. I felt the gaze of that hidden camera on my back, a physical weight. Then, at 5 a.m., the final, terrifying event happened. I finished scanning the botany guide and saved the file. I uploaded it to the RAW folder. User 404 was still active. I opened the file to verify the upload. It was all there. The title page, the 400 pages of Latin text, the illustrations. But on page 201, the page where the delicate drawing of the rare Arctic poppy should have been, the image had been replaced. The new image was a high-resolution, slightly grainy photograph of my own face. It wasn't a selfie. It was me, asleep, slumped over the staff lounge couch 2 nights ago, the Dickens volume lying open on my chest, my mouth slightly agape. Photograph was taken from a high, downward angle in the small, locked staff lounge in complete darkness. The camera flash hadn't even woken me up. I stared at the screen, every rational thought dissolving into static. The staff lounge had no cameras. I was locked in. The man had to be inside the annex with me. And he wasn't just watching the computer. He was archiving me. I grabbed the heavy metal edge of the scanner and swung it into the desktop monitor, shattering the glass and cutting the power. The sudden silence, the cessation of the humming, was worse than the noise. I didn't call the police. I didn't unlock the door. I threw my keys and phone into the water fountain and ran deeper into the dark, labyrinthine stacks, hiding myself among the oldest, dustiest sections of the archive. I stayed there, curled up in fetal position, surrounded by the smell of ancient paper and cold glue until the morning shift guard, Mr. Chun, used his master key to let himself in at 7 a.m. I quit that day. I told the police I was robbed and that a vagrant must have slipped in through a broken vent. They were polite but dismissive, just like always. They found the broken monitor, but no sign of intrusion, and no one named user 404 was ever traced. But I know he's still there. Last week, a package arrived at my new apartment. no return address. Inside was a small leather-bound volume. It was the 18th century botany guide I had been scanning, the exact copy. I didn't open it immediately. I knew what was inside. When I finally did, I flipped quickly to page 201. The drawing of the Arctic poppy was there. The text was there, but taped perfectly to the inside of the back cover was a new label. It was a digital printout, perfectly cut, formatted like a library catalog entry. It read, Alex Custodian, Archived Sleep State, File 404, Location, New York. I burned the book. I moved again. But I know that the archivist doesn't need a broken monitor or a locked door. He needs a record. And he's still making mine, page by terrifying page. I can still hear the distant, low hum of his server, even in my new quiet. And I know, sooner or later, he's going to request access to my live file again.